I'm not writing this because I think anyone will really believe me. I'm writing it because I can't sleep without seeing them. And I'm scared that if I forget even one detail, I'll start to think it wasn't real. It was real. It started as a stupid game of hide and seek. Nate's grandparents used to own the house. That's how we got it so cheap for the weekend. He'd talked it up for months. It's perfect for a horror movie, he kept saying. You'll see. Long hallways, creepy attic, the whole package. There were 6 of us. Me, Nate, his girlfriend Lauren, my best friend Sam, and then Jess and Tyler, who were kind of orbiting the group and kind of maybe dating. We were all in that weird phase of life where school is over. Work is some half-serious thing, and you're constantly pretending you're more relaxed about the future than you actually are. The drive there took about 2 hours. The house was out past the last gas station, at the end of a long, narrow road with no streetlights. When we pulled up, the sky was already going dull and flat. That light where everything turns gray before it turns black. The house was big, 3 stories, with peeling white paint and a porch that sagged a little in the middle. The windows on the top floor were dark and blank. One of them had that warped glass that makes whatever's behind it look like it's underwater. "Home sweet murder shack," Sam said, killing the engine. Nate laughed and slapped the side of the car. "Come on, at least wait until you see the inside before you start talking shit." The inside actually was nicer than I expected. Old, yeah, and cramped in spots. But there was a homey feel to it. Stuff that had clearly belonged to his grandparents was still there. Framed cross-stitch sayings on the wall. Ceramic roosters in the kitchen. A bowl of fake fruit that had faded into the same weird dusty color. We dumped our bags in the front hall and started claiming rooms. Nate and Lauren took the main bedroom on the 2nd floor, obviously. Jess and Tyler argued playfully over the room with the big window, until Tyler gave in and said he'd take the one across the hall. Sam and I got the smaller room at the end. 2 twin beds with mismatched quilts, and a dresser that smelled like old wood and mothballs. I remember standing by that bedroom window, looking down at the front yard. The porch light didn't work, so the front of the house was just a dark shape fading into the trees. There was this weird feeling in my chest. Not exactly dread, but something heavy. Like the air before a storm. "Hey," Sam said from behind me. "You okay?" I turned away from the window. "Yeah, just tired." "You'll wake up once we start drinking," he grinned. "Nate says he found a vintage bottle of whiskey in the basement, which I'm pretty sure means poison, but I'm willing to risk it." We laughed and went back downstairs. By the time it was fully dark outside, we'd already demolished half a pizza each, opened a few beers, and found an old box of board games under the TV stand. Most of the games were missing pieces. Lauren tried to set up a puzzle but gave up when she realized there were at least 3 different puzzles mixed in one box. "So what did your grandparents do out here anyway?" Jess asked, curled up on the couch with her feet under her. Nate shrugged. "Not much by the looks of it. My grandpa hunted. My grandma collected angels." He pointed to the high shelf above the TV, where a line of porcelain angel figurines stared down at us with bland, empty faces. "I hate those," Lauren said. "I feel like they watch you." "They probably do," Tyler replied, "judging all your life choices." He lifted his beer toward the angels in a mock toast and took a sip. The storm started around then, It wasn't a big dramatic thing, more like a steady heavy rain. You could hear it hitting the roof and trickling down the gutters. Every now and then thunder rolled by, far enough away that it sounded like someone dragging furniture. The power flickered once and came back while we were arguing about what to do for the rest of the night. There was no Wi-Fi, and the cell service was spotty. The TV only got static. We could tell ghost stories, Jess suggested. That's boring, Sam said. We live in the age of streaming. My attention span is fried. I need something interactive. Like what? I asked. He grinned. Hide and seek. Everyone groaned, but it was half-hearted. We're not 5, Lauren said. Not regular hide and seek, Sam said. Like extreme hide and seek. Lights off, whole house, no phones. If you're found, you join the seeker. Last one hiding wins. That's just tag but in the dark, Tyler said. We're going to break our necks. That's the spirit, Sam replied, nudging my shoulder. Come on, back me up. I looked around the house. The long hallways, the narrow staircases, the door at the end of the hall that Nate had said led to the basement. I pictured all the places a person could tuck themselves away. Under beds, inside closets, behind curtains. The idea made my chest feel tight and cold in a weirdly pleasant way. Fear, but the fun kind. The kind you choose. I'm in, I said. Nate pointed at me. See? Alex gets it. It's a horror movie house. You have to play a horror movie game. That logic is flawless, Jess said dryly, but she was already putting her beer down. Fine, but I'm wearing shoes. I'm not stepping barefoot on whatever died in one of these corners. In the end, everyone agreed. Maybe we were bored. Maybe we were drunk enough that our judgment was fuzzy around the edges. Maybe it's just easy to say yes when everyone else is saying yes. We decided the rules in the living room. All lights off. Only the seeker would get a flashlight, and it had to stay pointed at the floor unless they were checking a hiding spot. No phones. We put them all in a drawer in the kitchen. No going outside. The house and attached basement were fair game. The shed and woods outside were off limits. Tyler insisted on this. He had a thing about the dark outside. If the seeker found you, they whispered, got you. And you had to go with them and help find the others. Once you were caught, you were on the seeking team. No backing out. No talking unless you were the seeker, or it was an emergency. Nate went to the fuse box and showed us where it was in case something went wrong. The box was in the basement, on a concrete wall, next to a workbench covered in rusted tools. I already hated that room. It smelled damp, and the air down there felt heavier somehow. The first person to seek was chosen with a stupid game of rock, paper, scissors. Tyler lost. He rolled his eyes but didn't argue. We gave him the flashlight, and he stood in the middle of the living room while we pretended to take this way too seriously. Count out loud to 60, Lauren said, and close your eyes. If we catch you peeking, we get to draw dicks on your face in permanent marker. Very mature, Tyler said. He clicked the flashlight once, testing it, then turned it off. You better hide well. I'm competitive. Yeah, Sam said. Start counting. Tyler covered his eyes with his hands, and we all scattered. The first round was fun. Just normal fun. I ran upstairs, my socks sliding a little on the old wood, and ducked into the bathroom. I thought about hiding in the empty tub, but chose the cabinet under the sink instead. It was cramped, and some dusty bottles clinked when I squeezed in, but I managed to shift them enough to close the door almost all the way. Thin slivers of light came through the gap at the bottom, just enough that I could see the shape of my knees pulled tight to my chest. I could hear distant sounds, a door closing, someone tripping and swearing quietly, a muffled thud. Tyler's counting drifted up the stairs. 28, 29. After a minute, my breathing slowed. It was kind of peaceful, being folded up in the dark like that. The wood smelled old and dry. There was a faint hint of bleach. Footsteps came up the stairs. Slower now. The counting had stopped. I held my breath without meaning to. The footsteps went past the bathroom, then came back, slower still. The bathroom door creaked open a little. A crack of darker dark appeared. "Anyone in here?" Tyler whispered. His tone was light, teasing. The flashlight beam swept slowly across the small space, brightening the lines of the door, the floor under the cabinet. It lingered near the bottom of the cabinet, then moved away. The door creaked shut. I let out my breath in a shaky stream and grinned to myself. I could hear him moving on, checking rooms. Every now and then there was a soft, "Got you," and then 2 sets of footsteps instead of 1. I got found eventually. Lauren opened the cabinet, her face upside down and smiling. "There you are," she whispered. "Come on." We padded through the house as a group of 4 seekers then, giggling too much, shushing each other, and then giggling again. It took a while to find everyone, and by the end of it we were sweaty and a little out of breath. It felt like being a kid again, in a good way. We flopped back into the living room and turned the lights back on. "Okay," Sam said, cheeks flushed. "That was actually fun." "I told you," Nate grinned. "Who's next?" Jess asked. Now that we'd gotten over the initial stupidity of it, everyone was more into it. We were already talking over each other, suggesting rule tweaks. No hiding in the same place twice, no blocking doors. "I'll seek," I said, surprising myself. All eyes turned to me. "Hell yeah," Sam said. "Alex is ruthless. We're screwed." We dropped the lights again. The house went dark in a way it doesn't in the city. No glow from outside, no passing headlights, just black. Sam pressed the flashlight into my hand. "Don't fall down the stairs, dude." "I'll try," I said. I clicked the light on, checked the beam, then turned it off. "Go." They scattered. In the dark, the sound of them was louder somehow. Feet on stairs, doors opening and closing, someone bumping into furniture and whispering shit under their breath. I stood in the center of the living room, closed my eyes, and started counting. 1, 2, 3. It's different when you're the one counting. You hear every sound. You start thinking about the layout of the house, about all the places people could disappear into. You think about the fact that when you open your eyes, you'll be alone in the dark. When I reached 60, I opened my eyes. The room was pure shadow. My heart was going faster than it should have been. I clicked on the flashlight, pointed it at the floor, and started walking. I won't go through that whole round in detail. It was like the first one, harmless, a little creepy, but in a fun way. I found Jess first, under the dining table, then Nate, folded behind the coats in the front closet. Lauren was upstairs under a bed, and Tyler had jammed himself behind a bookshelf in one of the spare rooms. Sam, of course, had found some stupid over-the-top spot. He was sitting on top of the washing machine in the laundry room, with a sheet over him. When I pulled the sheet away and shined the light on his face, he actually jumped. "Jesus," he whispered. "You could have warned me." "That's not how the game works," I whispered back. When everyone was found, we regrouped and turned the lights on again. There was a looseness to everyone now. More jokes, more casual touching, brushing shoulders as we moved around the room. "Another round?" Nate asked. "Yeah," Jess said. "But someone else has to be seeker. Alex has unfair skills." Sam pointed at Lauren. You've got that quiet, murdery vibe." She tossed a cushion at him but agreed. That third round is when it all started sliding in the wrong direction. I didn't have a plan for my next hiding spot. When the lights went out and Lauren started counting, I froze for a second in the dark, listening to everyone else move. Their footsteps faded in different directions, upstairs, toward the kitchen, down the hall. I felt drawn toward the basement. It was a bad idea. I already knew that. The basement was colder, and the stairs were steep and narrow. But I also figured that made it a good hiding spot. Everyone would assume nobody would want to be down there alone. My feet found the top of the basement stairs. I went down carefully, hand on the rail, flashlight beam from upstairs barely reaching the top few steps before being swallowed by the dark. The basement smelled stronger with the lights off. Damp cement, old wood, and something metallic underneath it. I moved across the room, hands out a little in front of me, until my fingers brushed against a rough concrete wall. The fuse box was there, a dark rectangle. To the left, the old workbench. To the right, deeper into the basement. I let my eyes adjust. There was just enough light leaking from somewhere, the tiny windows near the ceiling maybe, that I could make out vague shapes, shelves, boxes, the chained outline of a water heater. In the far corner, I saw a set of shelves stacked with blankets and what looked like paint cans. There was a gap between the shelves and the wall, just big enough for a person. I squeezed into it. The concrete at my back was cold through my shirt. The smell of paint and dust was strong enough to taste. I pulled one of the hanging blankets out a little to cover the front of the gap more. Then I waited. Every sound felt bigger. I could hear the faint thumps of footsteps above, muffled voices when someone forgot to whisper. The pipes creaked once, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard the basement door open. The sound of it was clear, wood on wood, the subtle change in pressure as the air shifted. Then footsteps on the stairs, slow, like whoever it was couldn't see well. The steps reached the bottom. The basement went quiet. "Anyone down here?" The voice was soft, female. It sounded like Lauren, but there was something off about the tone, a flatness. I held my breath and tried not to move. Even my heartbeat felt too loud. The footsteps started again, coming closer to my corner. I could hear the slight scuff of shoes on concrete. A beam of light swung through the basement, bouncing off the shelves, slicking over metal and wood. It passed right over the blankets in front of me but didn't stop. The footsteps moved away, toward the workbench. I let out a slow breath. My legs were starting to cramp. I shifted my weight a little, and something small rolled under my shoe and clinked softly against the wall. The light swung back fast. It hit the blankets dead on. I heard the footsteps change direction, coming straight toward me. The beam shook a little, the way a hand shakes when it's held up too long. My heart was pounding so hard it made my chest hurt. For a second I thought, this is too much. I'll just give up and step out. The blanket in front of me lifted. Bright light stabbed into the narrow space. I squinted and raised a hand to shield my eyes. "Got you," Lauren whispered. I let out a shaky laugh. "Shit. Okay, you got me." I slid out from behind the shelves, stretching my legs. The beam of the flashlight moved off my face and down to the floor. Lauren stood in front of me, holding the light in one hand. The other hand was empty. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and there was a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. "You were really down here alone?" she asked. "Yeah. Figured nobody else would want to." She smiled a little. "You're weird." "I know," I said. "Who else have you found?" "You're the first." She turned and started walking back toward the stairs. "Come on, let's go hunt." We moved through the basement together, checking corners and behind stacks of boxes, just in case someone else had come down. Nobody was there. When we reached the stairs, she clicked off the light. "Why are you turning it off?" I whispered. "Because it's more fun this way," she whispered back. "Follow me. Don't trip." I could hear her going up the stairs, her hand sliding on the rail. I put my hand on the wall and followed. Halfway up, something brushed my arm, and I flinched, but it was just the loose edge of the wall. At the top, the door creaked open again, and we stepped into the hall. The house felt different somehow. The dark upstairs wasn't the same as the dark downstairs. It felt closer here, more personal. We moved down the hallway, Lauren turning the flashlight on only when we reached doorways, sweeping it quickly inside before flipping it off again. We found nobody in the first few rooms. When we reached the second floor, the house was very quiet. Too quiet. "Where is everyone?" I whispered. "Good hiders, I guess," she whispered back. The light slid under door cracks along the floor. We checked my room. Empty. Nate and Lauren's room. Empty. The bathroom, the closet, the tiny linen cupboard at the end of the hall. Empty. A faint sound reached us from somewhere above. A rhythmic creak, then a soft thud. "The attic," Lauren whispered. Nate had mentioned the attic earlier, but said there wasn't much up there. Old clothes, some boxes. We hadn't planned to hide up there because he wasn't sure how safe the floor was in places. The creaking sound came again, then stopped. We went up anyway. The attic hatch was in the ceiling at the end of the hallway, with a rope hanging down. Lauren grabbed it and pulled. The hatch dropped open with a dusty sigh, and a folded wooden ladder unfolded with it, stopping a foot above the floor. Lauren turned the flashlight on and pointed it up into the darkness. "Anyone up there?" she asked softly. No answer. She put her foot on the bottom rung, testing it, then started up. I followed, the wood flexing slightly under our weight. The attic smell hit me first. Dry, dusty, and stale. The air felt warmer up there despite the night. The beam of the flashlight cut a narrow slice through the darkness, showing old trunks, boxes stacked crookedly, and a dress form leaning in one corner like a headless person. The creaking sound came again. It was closer now, on the far side of the attic. Lauren moved toward it, the flashlight beam steady ahead of her. I stayed close behind, telling myself I wasn't scared, even though the hairs on the back of my neck disagreed. We rounded a stack of boxes and saw what was making the sound. A rope hung from one of the ceiling beams. It had a loop at the end. The loop swung slowly back and forth. Each movement made the rope creak against the beam. "That's not funny," I said immediately, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. "Nate, if that's you, it's not funny." The flashlight beam jerked a little as Lauren's grip tightened. "There's nobody there," she whispered. She swept the light around. Empty insulation, more boxes, no people. The rope kept swinging, slower now. A cold feeling slid down my spine. My mouth went dry. "Let's go," I said. "Seriously, let's just go back down and call the round. They can all come out. This is stupid." Lauren didn't answer right away. She took a few more steps forward, raising the flashlight to follow the rope up to where it was tied. I reached for her arm. That's when we heard it. A sound from below. A shout, cut off suddenly. We both froze. "Did you hear that?" I asked, even though I knew she had. "Yeah," she said. Her voice sounded small. "We should go." We turned and half ran back toward the ladder. The attic seemed bigger suddenly, the flashlight beam too thin, not reaching far enough. We climbed down too fast, wood groaning under us, the ladder shaking. The rope in the attic creaked one more time, then went still. The hallway below was empty. The dark seemed thicker somehow. I could hear Lauren breathing next to me. "Hello?" she called. The word came out louder than she probably meant. It echoed slightly off the walls. No answer. We moved down the stairs to the first floor. The living room was just as we'd left it, cushions scattered around, a half-empty bag of chips on the coffee table. The TV screen reflected a faint ghost of the flashlight beam when it passed. "Nate?" Lauren called. "Sam? Where are you guys?" "Maybe they think we're still hiding," I said, even though I didn't believe it. We went room by room. The kitchen, the dining room, the laundry room, the little office with the broken printer. We checked behind doors, under tables, inside closets. No one. My stomach started doing slow flips. There had been a shout. I knew I'd heard it. It hadn't sounded playful. "Maybe someone got hurt," I said. "Twisted an ankle or something." "Then where are they?" Lauren snapped, then immediately shook her head. "Sorry, this is weird." We ended up back in the hallway by the stairs. Lauren looked at me. Her pupils were blown wide, nearly swallowing the color of her irises. "We split up," she said. "We'll cover more ground." "No," I said. The word came out fast. "No, that's stupid. That's exactly how people die in movies." She gave a shaky laugh. "This isn't a movie." It sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than me. "I'm being serious," I said. "We don't split up. We go together and we find them and we turn the lights on and we stop playing this game." A muscle jumped in her jaw. She looked like she wanted to argue. Then the lights flickered. They didn't go out completely. They just flickered, dimming and brightening twice. The flashlight beam looked washed out against the brief glow. Then everything went black. "Shit," Lauren whispered. I heard the flashlight click off and on again. Nothing. She clicked it a few more times, but the beam didn't come back. "Don't move," I said. My voice sounded shaky in my own ears. "Just don't move. I'll get the fuse box. We know where it is." "How?" she whispered. "We can't see anything." "The wall," I said. "We can follow the wall. It's just downstairs." It felt like pushing through something physical when I took the first step. My foot felt for the top stair, found it, then the next. I kept one hand on the rail and the other on the wall. Lauren's hand hovered on my shoulder. Fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt. We went down to the basement like that. The darkness down there was total. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. The air felt colder and thicker than before. I counted the steps to the bottom. 12. I'd counted them earlier without really meaning to. "Okay," I whispered when my feet hit concrete. Wall. Left. 3 meters, maybe. We moved slowly. My fingers brushed cold cement, then rough wood, then the flat, cool metal of the fuse box. I heard Lauren let out a small breath, like she'd been holding it. I fumbled for the latch, white spots dancing behind my closed eyelids, even though there was no light. Finally, the box door came open, scraping metal on metal. I ran my hand over the switches. They felt small and delicate under my fingers. I couldn't see which one was which. "Screw it," I muttered, and flipped them all down, then back up, one by one. Nothing happened. I did it again, slower, just in case. The house stayed dark. "It's not working," I said. My voice sounded thinner than before. "Maybe the storm knocked out a line," Lauren whispered. "Then why did it just flicker before?" I whispered back. We stood there for a few seconds, breathing, listening. The sound of the rain outside was faint but steady. It grounded me a little. The world still existed. It was just out past the blown-out edges of this house. Then we heard it. A sound from deeper in the basement. Not loud. A soft drag, like something heavy being pulled slowly across the floor. We both froze. The sound went on for a second, then stopped. "Hello?" Lauren called. Her voice cracked on the second syllable. No answer. The sound started again. Drag. Pause. Drag. Closer this time. My throat went tight. I swallowed and felt it stick halfway down. "Who's there?" I called. "Nate? Is that you? This isn't funny." The dragging stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to touch. "Alex," Lauren whispered. "Let's go back upstairs." "Yeah," I managed. We took one step back, then another. There was a sudden rush of sound, not the slow drag from before. A fast series of footsteps cutting through the dark, coming from the right. Too fast. "Run," I said. or thought I said. I'm not sure if the word made it out loud. Something slammed into me from the side, a hard, heavy impact that knocked the breath out of my lungs. I hit the floor, the side of my head cracking against the concrete, white pain exploding behind my eyes. For a second I saw stars, real bright spots. Then nothing. I don't know how long I was out. It couldn't have been that long. When I came back, the first thing I felt was my own heartbeat thudding in my skull. The second thing was the cold floor under my hands. The dark was still total. That told me the power was still out. My head throbbed. I touched the side of it and my fingers came away wet. I couldn't see the color, but I didn't need to. Lauren, I croaked. My voice scraped. No answer. Lauren, I tried again, louder. Somewhere in the dark, something shifted. A small sound. Not a person. Just a tiny click, like a nail on concrete. I pushed myself up onto my knees. The room tilted. I swallowed back nausea and forced myself to stand, one hand on the wall. I moved slowly toward where I thought the stairs were. My feet shuffled against the concrete, the sound loud in the silence. My toes hit the bottom step, and I exhaled in a rush. Lauren? I whispered again, quieter now. The basement stayed quiet. Step by step, I climbed the stairs. My legs felt weak, like they might give out under me. Halfway up, a sharp bolt of pain shot through my skull, and I had to stop, forehead pressed to the cool wall, breathing slowly until the rush of blood in my ears settled. When I reached the top, I fumbled for the doorknob with shaking hands. It turned. The door opened with a soft creak. The house above was no less dark, but it felt different, airier, less compressed. Hello? I called. Guys? My voice echoed faintly down the hall. No answer. I thought about going back down for Lauren, but my whole body rebelled at the idea. I told myself she'd probably gone upstairs while I was out, gone to get help or check on the others. The lie was thin, but it was something to hold on to. My hand brushed the wall until it found the shape of a light switch. I flicked it up and down a few times out of habit, even though I knew it wouldn't work. Nothing happened. I remembered the drawer in the kitchen where we dumped our phones. If I could make it there, I could at least use one as a flashlight, even if there was no signal. That thought became my whole focus. I moved down the hall toward where the kitchen should be. The layout of the house had already become a map in my head. Right turn at the end of the hall. 10 steps. Left into the kitchen. Something squished under my shoe on step 8. I froze. Heart hammering. I leaned against the wall with one hand and lifted my foot slowly. It was sticky. Thick. Blood, my brain supplied. It didn't even try to come up with anything else. I didn't want to touch it with my hands. I didn't want to confirm what I already knew. But the not knowing was worse. Slowly I crouched down. My fingers brushed the floor. Cold. Smooth. Then they slid into something wet and slick. It clung to my skin in a thin layer. I lifted my hand to my nose and sniffed. The metallic tang hit me like a punch. My stomach lurched. I swallowed hard. Hello, I whispered again, even though I knew I didn't really want an answer. I moved my hand out on the floor, feeling along, my fingers hit cloth. A leg shape under it. Jeans. Skin. I jerked my hand back like I'd been burned. My breath came fast and shallow, the air too thin. I thought about who had been wearing jeans. Everyone, I realized stupidly. Everyone but Lauren, who had on leggings. I made myself search again. This time I worked up higher, along the leg to the hip. My hand brushed something else, something solid, round, and cold. A belt buckle. Sam, I whispered, because I remembered he'd been wearing a belt with a big round buckle. My throat closed around the name. I forced my fingers higher. The shirt was damp. When I got to where the chest should be, my hand slipped into a gap that shouldn't have been there. It felt wrong on a level deeper than words. Soft where it should be firm. Open where it should be closed. Ribs, I realized numbly. They were broken. Some were missing. I snatched my hand back, choking. I couldn't help it then. My brain conjured the image even though I couldn't see it. Sam lying on his back in the hallway, shirt soaked, chest torn open. I pictured his face the way I'd last seen it in the living room, laughing at something, eyes crinkled. Then I imagined it slack and empty. The wrongness of it hit me in a wave. For a second I thought I might pass out again. I didn't have time. A sound came from behind me, soft but clear. The same 3-syllable whisper we'd all been throwing around as a joke. Got you. The voice was right at my ear. I spun, stumbling. My shoulder hit the wall hard. My head rang. Something brushed past my face. Fingers. They grazed my cheek, then were gone into the dark. I didn't think. I ran. I barreled down the hallway, slamming my shoulder into the wall, bouncing off door frames. The house became a blur of shapes and angles I couldn't see. I counted doorways by the brush of empty air against my fingers. 1, 2. Kitchen. I stumbled through the doorway and went straight for where I remembered the counter being. My hip hit it, and pain shot up my side, but I grabbed for the drawer handle, yanked it open. My fingers hit a jumble of cold metal and plastic. Forks, knives, the hard rectangles of phones. I grabbed a handful of the nearest things and backed away from the counter. Something clattered to the floor. I didn't stop to pick it up. My thumb found the button on the side of the nearest phone. I pressed it. Nothing. I tried another. The screen lit up dimly, a square of pale light that felt like salvation. The battery icon in the corner was nearly empty, but I didn't care. I held the phone up. The weak glow barely reached the far side of the room, but it was enough. Okay, I whispered to myself. Okay. Think. The first thing I did was look down at myself. My hand was smeared dark with dried blood. Sam's, probably. The side of my head was sticky too, hair clumped around a cut. My shirt was streaked where I'd wiped my hands against it. The second thing I did was check the floor. There were shoe prints in the blood I'd stepped in, smeared along the hallway. They led from the kitchen doorway back toward the spot where I'd found Sam's body. There were other marks too, less clear, drag marks. Something heavy pulled along the floor and then gone. The trail just stopped, as if whatever it was had lifted off. I forced my eyes away from that and looked around the kitchen. Nothing seemed out of place. The chairs were still tucked under the table. The bag of bread on the counter was open, the twist tie lying next to it where Tyler had left it. I dialed 911. Nothing happened. No signal. "Come on," I whispered at the phone. "Come on." In the corner of the screen, where the bars should be, there was just an empty outline. No service. I wanted to scream. Instead, I shoved the useless phone into my pocket and grabbed one of the knives that had fallen on the floor. It wasn't big, just a regular kitchen knife, but the handle fit my palm. I took a breath, then another. People were dead. At least one person. Probably more. Something had cracked Sam open like he was meat. Someone. The thought hit me with a clarity that cut through the fog. This wasn't a ghost or a monster or whatever. This was a person. A person strong enough to do that kind of damage. Quiet enough to move around a creaky old house in the dark without making much noise. A person who knew the house. Who could find their way from the basement to the hallway without bumping into every piece of furniture. Nate, my brain supplied. It offered the name up reluctantly, like it knew I wouldn't like it. I didn't want to think that. But the fact was, we were out in the middle of nowhere, in his family's house, with the power out and no signal. He'd been weird about the basement earlier, joking but in that forced way. What if he's dead too? I whispered to myself. That possibility helped. It meant I didn't have to choose who to suspect yet. I needed to find Lauren, and Jess, and Tyler. I needed to know who was still alive. I stepped back into the hallway, knife in one hand, phone held out in the other like a torch. The light caught something on the wall. A smear, dark and uneven. I moved the phone closer and my stomach twisted. Handprints. 4 of them, sliding down the wall, fingers trailing long streaks. The size was wrong for Sam. Smaller, more delicate. Lauren, I breathed. The prints ended in a patch of smeared darkness on the floor. No body, just the stain left behind. I forced myself to move past it, one step at a time. At the base of the stairs, something lay in the middle of the hallway. I almost tripped over it. I pointed the phone down and saw the flashlight, the one Lauren had been holding. It was snapped in half. The plastic casing cracked. The batteries rolled halfway out, like someone had stomped on it. Hard. I picked it up out of reflex, then realized it was useless and dropped it again. The clatter sounded too loud in the quiet. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. I froze. "Jess?" I called, not too loud. "Tyler?" No answer. Another floorboard creaked. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. My heart hammered so hard my chest hurt. Every instinct screamed at me to run out the front door and into the rain, down the long driveway, away from this house. But the image of Jess and Tyler in some corner of the house, hiding and waiting for someone to find them before the wrong person did, kept me rooted. I tightened my grip on the knife and started up the stairs. The second-floor hallway looked different under the weak phone light. The photos on the walls stared back at me in brief flashes. Sepia-toned faces from decades ago. Nobody I knew. Their eyes seemed to follow the light as it moved. My shoes stuck slightly in patches on the floor. I didn't look too closely at what I was stepping in. The door to my room was half open. I pushed it with my foot, knife ready. The room was empty. The quilts on the beds were still rumpled from when we'd dropped our bags earlier. My backpack lay on the floor by the dresser, half zipped, clothes spilling out. I slipped inside long enough to grab the flashlight I always kept in the front pocket of my pack. It wasn't big, but it was better than the phone. When I clicked it on, the beam was sharper, cutting a clean path through the dark. I stuck the phone in my pocket and went back into the hall. Nate and Lauren's room was next. The door was closed. Something dark seeped out from under it, a thin line that had spread and dried at the edges. My throat tightened. Slowly, I put my hand on the doorknob. It felt slick. I wiped it off on my shirt, swallowed, and turned it. The door swung open. The smell hit me first, thick, metallic, and sweet in a way that made my stomach heave. I raised the flashlight and forced myself to look. Nate was on the bed, or what was left of him. Most of his chest was gone, not sliced open neatly, just gone, ripped. Bones snapped and pushed out of place. One of his arms hung off the side of the bed at an angle arms don't go. Fingers curled toward the floor. His face was turned toward the door. His eyes were open, but they didn't see me. Lauren wasn't there. I gagged and stumbled back, one hand over my mouth. Spots danced at the edges of my vision. For a second, I thought I might lose it completely. I forced myself to pull the door closed. I couldn't stand the idea of leaving him like that, the smell spilling out into the hallway. The knife felt useless in my hand. Whatever had done that to him, I doubted a little kitchen knife would slow it down. My brain kept trying to make it make sense. Some part of me kept insisting it had to be an animal, a bear or something. But there had been no broken windows, no splintered doors. The cuts, where there were cuts, were too clean. A person. It came back to that, no matter how I tried to twist away from it. But how does a person rip someone open like that? I didn't have an answer. Across the hall, Tyler's door was closed. There were no marks on the floor outside it. "Tyler?" I called softly. "It's Alex. Are you in there?" No answer. I put my ear to the door. Nothing. No breathing. No movement. My hand shook as I turned the knob. The room inside was cold. The window had been forced open from the inside, the frame splintered. Rain misted in, making the curtains slap softly against the wall. The bed was empty. The closet door stood open on neat rows of hangers. In the corner, something dark stained the carpet. Not as bad as Nate's room, but enough. Next to it, a palm print dragged toward the window. Fingernail marks scored the sill. He'd gone out, or been dragged out. I staggered back, bumping into the hallway wall. My legs felt like they were buzzing. "Jess," I whispered. "Oh God, Jess." Her room was at the far end of the hall, the one with the big window. The door was slightly ajar. The light from my flashlight made a thin wedge on the floor through the gap. As I moved toward it, something wet dripped onto the back of my hand. I flinched and looked up. The ceiling above me was smooth. No stains, No cracks. Another drop hit my wrist. Thicker. Almost a plop. I raised the flashlight higher. The beam caught on something hanging just above the door frame. For a second, my brain refused to understand what it was seeing. Then it snapped into focus. Jess hung upside down from a hook in the ceiling. Someone had driven a metal hook into the beam above the door and threaded a rope around her ankles. Her arms dangled toward the floor, fingers nearly brushing it. Her hair hung in a curtain, dripping. Her throat was open. Not a straight cut. More like something had torn at it, again and again, until the front of her neck was just a ragged hole. Blood had soaked the front of her shirt and pooled on the floor below her, spreading outward in a dark halo. Her eyes were open, her mouth too, frozen in a final silent scream. I stumbled back so fast I hit the opposite wall and slid down it. The flashlight beam swung wildly, sending shadows lunging across the hallway. My whole body felt like it was buzzing. My hands went numb. The knife clattered to the floor next to me. I don't know how long I sat there. Seconds, maybe. It felt longer. A tiny hysterical part of my brain noted how her body swung slightly back and forth, like the rope in the attic. "Hide and seek," it whispered. She didn't hide well enough. I bit down on my tongue hard enough to taste blood, just to shut that voice up. A floorboard creaked behind me. Downstairs this time. Someone was still moving around in the house. Deliberate. Unhurried. I picked up the knife and forced myself to stand. My knees shook. I had to lean on the wall until the worst of it passed. I had two choices, as far as my brain could see. Hide, or try to get out. Hiding made me want to crawl out of my own skin. The idea of folding myself into some dark corner and waiting for footsteps to come closer and closer made my chest ache. Getting out meant going back downstairs, past the blood, past Sam's body, past whatever else might be waiting. I chose the door. The staircase creaked under my weight. I tried to step near the edges, where the wood was thicker, but it still made noise. Every sound echoed too loud in my head. Halfway down, I paused to listen. The house was quiet except for the patter of rain and the faint ticking of something cooling somewhere. No footsteps. I made it to the bottom and moved toward the front hall. The phone in my pocket vibrated once. A low battery warning, probably. And I nearly jumped out of my skin. The front door loomed ahead of me. A simple thing. Wood. A pane of glass at the top. The deadbolt stuck sometimes, Nate had said. My hand shook as I reached for it. The bolt slid back easier than I expected. That was the first good thing that had happened since the lights went out. I grabbed the knob, turned it, and pulled. The door didn't move. For a second I thought my brain had misread what my hand felt, that the bolt was still locked. I checked. No, it was turned. The knob was turning too. The door was blocked from the outside. I pressed my shoulder against it and shoved. It gave an inch, then stopped. Something heavy scraped on the porch. Whoever had done all this had barricaded us in. My vision tunneled. I pressed my forehead to the cool wood and tried to breathe. Okay. Back door. The kitchen had one. I moved as fast as I dared down the hall, careful not to slip in the blood. The beam of the flashlight jittered with every step. In the kitchen, I went straight to the back door and jammed the knife between the frame and the deadbolt. It didn't budge. I tried the handle. It turned, but the door didn't move. Another barricade. Every exit, I realized. Whoever this was, they knew the house. They knew where the doors were, the windows that opened easily, the ones that stuck. They'd closed the trap. I leaned against the counter, breathing too fast. I felt like my brain was starting to float away from my body. Every detail seemed too sharp. The pattern on the floor tiles, the humming buzz of the fridge that had stopped when the power went out and never come back. Footsteps sounded behind me. Slow, even, coming down the hallway. I didn't think. I dove under the kitchen table, curling myself as small as I could, knife held tight against my chest. I turned off the flashlight and held my breath. The world shrank to the circle of space under the table. 4 chair legs, my own knees, the faint outline of the doorway. The footsteps came closer. The sound of bare feet on tile. Not shoes. Skin on stone. They stopped in the doorway. Silence. I tried to make myself smaller. Every muscle screamed. The footsteps moved into the room. 1, 2, 3. Slow. They didn't try to be quiet. That was somehow worse. They stopped near the counter where I'd just been. Something scraped across the counter surface. A drawer opened. Silverware clinked. Whoever it was chuckled softly. The sound was low, almost friendly. "You broke my rules," a voice said. I recognized it, but my brain didn't want to put a name to it yet. "No phones," the voice went on. "No lights. No going outside. We were having so much fun, and then you had to ruin it." My chest burned. I needed to breathe. A chair leg creaked. One of the chairs was pulled back a few inches. The voice moved closer, right next to the table now. "I know you're in here, Alex," the voice said. Calm, almost amused. "You're the only one who always hides in boring spots." The hand that had been clenching the knife went numb. My fingers slipped on the handle. I tightened them again and forced myself to breathe as quietly as I could. Tiny sips of air. A face dropped down to my level between the chairs, upside down, grinning into the dark. Nate. His hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat and blood. His eyes were bright and sharp. There was blood on his teeth, dark and crusted in the corners of his mouth. I'd seen his guts spilled across the bed upstairs. I'd shut the door on them. I didn't know what I was looking at. "Got you," he whispered, smiling wider. My body moved before my brain could catch up. I lunged forward with the knife, aiming for his face. He was faster than I expected. He jerked back, and the blade caught his cheek instead, slicing a long, shallow line. Dark liquid welled up and dripped down his neck. The cheerful light in his eyes went flat. Cold. He laughed once, a short, harsh sound. "Bad hider," he said. "Worse seeker." He grabbed the edge of the table with both hands and flipped it. The world spun. The table crashed over, chairs scattering. My shoulder hit the floor hard. The flashlight flew out of my pocket and rolled away, clattering against the cabinets, its beams stuttering on and off. I scrambled back on my hands and heels, trying to get my feet under me. Nate stepped over the fallen chairs like they weren't there. "Don't run," he said. "It's no fun when you run." He had something in his hand. At first I thought it was a knife, but it was longer. One of the big carving knives from the drawer, maybe. The blade caught the flickering light and turned it into a bright line. I grabbed the nearest chair and swung it at him. He ducked, laughing, and the chair hit the wall, splintering. I didn't even feel it leave my hands. My body was running on some automatic survival script, beyond thought. He lunged with the knife. I twisted. The blade grazed my side, hot and sharp, and bit into the cabinet behind me instead. He yanked it free and came at me again. The kitchen felt smaller and smaller. Every step backward put me closer to a wall or a corner. I kept the smaller knife up between us, but it felt like a toy. "You're taking all my work away," he said conversationally as he swung again. "I had plans for you." "For me?" I choked out. The word came without my permission. He smiled. "You and Sam were supposed to be last. Best for last, right? But then you got clever. Went for the phone." He feinted to the right and then slashed left. The blade nicked my forearm and pain flared bright and hot. I backed into the sink. There was nowhere else to go. "Why?" I heard myself ask, voice high and thin. Nate tilted his head, as if considering the question. "Because it's my house," he said. "Because we used to play this game all the time. Me and Mark and the others. Grandpa made us. He said it was training, for when the bad men came. 'You hide, I seek,' he'd say. 'If I find you, you die.'" He laughed again, a weird, wet sound. He never really killed us, obviously, but it felt like it. Getting dragged out of a closet by your hair. Getting locked in the crawl space for hours if you cried. You learn, you know? You learn to be quiet. You learn to be still. He took a step closer. I could see every detail of his face now. The cut on his cheek. The blood spatter on his neck. "You brought us here," I said. "You asked us to play." "Yeah," he said simply. "You ever want to share something from your childhood with your friends?" "My childhood didn't involve hanging people from the ceiling," I snapped, even though my voice shook. He shrugged. "We all grow up different." The tip of his knife pressed against my chest, right over my sternum. Light pressure, just enough to prick through the fabric. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'll make it quick. You've been a good sport." Something in me snapped at that. Maybe it was the word quick. Maybe it was the thought of Sam's open chest, Jess swinging above the door, Lauren's bloody handprints. I slammed my knee upward as hard as I could. It connected. He made a small, choked sound and doubled over. The knife slipped away from my chest for a second. I didn't waste it. I brought my smaller knife down, aiming for his shoulder, but he twisted, and the blade sank into the meat of his upper arm instead. He screamed, loud this time. The sound was raw and animal. He jerked back, the knife ripping free from my hand, then slashing out wildly with his own. White-hot pain scored across my ribs. I felt warmth blossom on my side, spreading. I stumbled sideways, hit the counter, and went down. My head smacked the floor, and the world went fuzzy around the edges. Through the blur, I saw Nate clutching his arm. Blood ran between his fingers, dripping steadily onto the tile. His face was twisted, eyes wide and wild. "You ruined it," he spat. "You ruined everything." He lifted the knife again and came toward me. The flashlight in the corner flickered one more time and went out. The world shrank to the sound of his breathing and the steady drip of blood on the tile. I rolled onto my stomach and crawled, fingers clawing at the floor. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. Anywhere away. My hand found the fallen table leg. My fingers closed around it, slick with something, and I pulled it with me. Nate's bare feet slapped against the floor behind me. "Where do you think you're going?" he sing-songed. His voice was off-key, higher than usual. No going outside. Those were the rules. My shoulder hit a doorway. The hallway. I dragged myself through it, leaving a smear on the floor. He followed. I could feel him behind me. Closer. Closer. "Hide," he whispered. "Hide, Alex. Make it fun for me." I rolled onto my back, my side on fire. He loomed over me, knife raised. I swung the table leg. It connected with his knee. There was a crack, loud and sharp. His leg buckled, and he went down with a shout, crashing onto his side. The knife skittered across the hallway, spinning out of reach of both of us. We stared at each other in the dark. I could hear him panting, sharp, angry breaths. "You're dead," he snarled. "You hear me? You're already dead." He lunged for my throat with his hands. I jammed the end of the table leg into his face. There was a crunch. Something gave way. His grip loosened, then tightened again, fingers scrabbling for purchase. I pushed harder, screaming without realizing I was doing it. Something cracked. Warmth splashed over my hands. He let out a gurgling noise and slumped. I kept pushing until his weight went slack. My arms shook. My vision blurred. The smell hit me a second later, stronger than before. Blood and something else, thicker, like raw meat left out too long. I let go of the table leg and rolled away, gasping. For a long time, all I heard was my own breathing and the rain. I don't remember how I got to the porch. There are flashes. Me crawling to the front door, feeling along the seam until I found a gap big enough to slip my fingers through. Realizing the barricade outside was just the porch bench pushed up against it. Shoving, pushing, my muscles screaming, my side leaking warmth down my hip. The door finally gave way with a groan. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, wet, clean. I stumbled out onto the porch and collapsed on the steps. The rain soaked me in seconds, plastering my shirt to my skin, washing thin pink streams down the wood. Some part of me thought I should keep going. Down the driveway, to the road, to anywhere else. I couldn't. My body was done. Empty. I lay there, watching the rain hit the puddles and splash up in tiny crowns. My hands shook. My side throbbed in time with my heartbeat. At some point, headlights cut through the trees. A car engine. Voices. I don't remember what I said to the EMTs. I know I tried to explain that there was someone inside, that everyone else was dead, that Nate had. They told me later that when the sheriff's deputies went in, they found 5 bodies: Sam, Jess, Tyler, Lauren, and someone else in the hallway downstairs, unrecognizable except for the clothes. They said it was Nate. They asked me how I had managed to hurt him that badly. They said the skull was shattered in multiple places. They said it looked less like a beating and more like he'd been hit by a car. I told them about the table leg, about swinging until he stopped moving. They nodded and wrote things down, but their eyes kept sliding away from mine, like I was something they didn't want to look at too long. No one mentioned the body in the bed upstairs, the one that had looked like Nate, the one I'd shut the door on. When I asked about it later, they said there had been a lot of blood in that room. Yes, but no body. They said trauma makes memories unreliable, that I was probably mixing things up. There are other things I don't tell them. I don't tell them that when I was lying on the porch, drifting in and out, I heard the attic creaking again. Slow, steady swings. I don't tell them that sometimes in the middle of the night, when the house settles and a board creaks, I hear his voice in my head. "Got you," he whispers. "Your turn to seek." They say I survived by being smart, by fighting back. They say I'm lucky. But here's the thing. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I remember the feeling of that table leg in my hands, the give of bone, the way something deep in me relaxed when he stopped moving, like a knot coming undone. Sometimes I wonder if I only survived because I enjoyed it, if I enjoyed it the way he did. Sometimes I catch myself counting under my breath when I walk into a dark room. 1, 2, 3. I don't play games anymore. I don't go into basements. I keep every light in my apartment on at night, bulbs burning hot until they go out. But I still feel it sometimes. The itch in my muscles, the awareness of every shadow, the urge to turn the lights off and see what's hiding there. We were playing hide and seek. Now I'm always seeking, even when I don't want to. And I know, with a kind of sick certainty, that someday, somewhere, I'm going to hear footsteps in the dark behind me, and a soft voice close to my ear. "Got you." I don't know if it'll be someone else saying it, or me.